welcome everybody. I think there's a few new faces here. So you new people, welcome. And if you've never been here before, this is Meditation Learning Center. My name is Shane Wilson. This place was actually, I guess you could say, established or registered in the Phoenix business thing back in 2001, and so we've been here for quite a while. And a lot of the teachings that we've done in the past is over at the Sri Lankan Buddhist temple over off of Broadway on Temple Street. And actually, we have a course coming up there first week of September, first Saturday of next month, an 8-week course. It's the primary function of that course is about mindfulness, and I thought I'd actually talk a little bit about mindfulness this evening, and then we'll do a meditation that kind of outlines mindfulness and the practice of mindfulness. And most of us, if we've been practicing meditation, probably have been practicing mindfulness-based meditation practice. Sometimes it's called insight meditation or vipassana, depending on what kind of tradition we're coming from. Even if we've been practicing something like some of the Zen practices, from the Zen or the Chan, Chinese Zen tradition. Excuse me. It's probably mindfulness-based. The alternative to that would be concentration, and they're both very much related in a way. If somebody's practicing concentration or practicing meditation, we couldn't tell by looking at them and watching them meditate. But with the concentration, we are exclusively focusing on something with the exclusion of everything else. So the purpose of concentration meditation is to get more concentrated, basically, and go into these different levels of concentration. And a good way to look at that is if we are sawing a piece of wood. If you ever sawed a piece of wood with a saw, you're not watching the saw like this, or you're not, looking around or anything like that. And especially if you want to saw a straight line, let's say there's a pencil line you're trying to saw on, what you generally do is focus right where that blade of that saw is hitting that wood, and you're just focusing on that. I mean, it would be pretty laborious to follow the saw itself. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous, but it's a good example of a single-pointed awareness or single-pointed concentration. That point of focus is very still. It's not necessarily on a moving, or it's not necessarily on a still object, because everything is impermanent, and changing all the time anyway. But our focus and our concentration is very pinpointed, we could say. And so that concentration practice, we could be using the breath, and most people do. The Buddha suggested that we use the breath. Most of my teachers pointed out that we should be using the breath for concentration. We bring our attention to wherever we feel the breath and just hold it there, without the intention of following anything or allowing it, really not trying to keep thoughts away, but not allowing that any kind of cognitive activity to bubble up or anything. And it seems almost impossible to do that, because it's very natural, very human to have these thoughts. But the more we practice that in different stages, the better we get at it. And one of the practices, often considered a setup practice, is to count the breaths. And Tony and I were talking about that a while back. counting the breaths, maybe starting at 100 and counting backwards or something like that. And when you're counting the breath, it seems like such a boring activity. I mean, you could even count, from 1 up to 500 or whatever it might take. But that activity is not allowing, necessarily any other thoughts to come into our awareness. So it's a real good pointer to what concentration is. And eventually that counting itself is too much activity. So the counting stops and we just remain very, very still and focusing on the breath in one single area. And then with that we can go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into these states of what are called jhana, but they're concentration state, levels of concentration, we could say. The more common practice is vipassana or insight meditation, or what we would most of us would refer to as a mindfulness-based meditation practice. And with mindfulness, we have an opportunity to, we're not trying to change anything or stop anything or really look at anything different than our normal way of looking, except for we don't want anything to get caught up in our awareness. So if something comes into our awareness, we just let it fall back to where it wants to go. We're not hanging on to anything. We're using bare attention, attention that is bare of any kind of judgment, any kind of decision, or any kind of commentary, like inner dialogue or anything. We're just seeing everything for what it is. And so one of the keys to that is keeping in mind that it's different. It's two completely different things, from thinking a thought to being aware of a thought. So if we have conscious thought happening, it's more like one thought following another. Like each thought triggers the next one. Each one follows the next, with very little gap in between. And we feel like these thoughts are very much our identity, whether they're good thoughts or bad thoughts. And it's a very normal conscious thought for us. And when we're mindful, we are more we are being aware of the thought itself. Now, there's a difference, but it's a very subtle difference. When we're aware of a thought, watching a thought rather than actually getting caught up in it, there's usually a gap. We can see a gap in between the thought itself. And the thoughts are much more lighter, but we don't identify with it as being, something that we are in charge of, that, I can change this, or, that I have to do this. And usually they're always thoughts of the past and the future, almost always. We can be very, very present and still have some thoughts, but they're so light and so much, so welcome that they don't bother our meditation or anything that we're doing outside of meditation. And so if we keep this in mind, that thinking a thought is different than observing or being aware of a thought, it's two different things. And we can do that in meditation or outside of meditation. So it's often said that the practice of mindfulness can be a part of our meditation practice itself, or we can practice mindfulness outside of meditation. And I've often said that that mindfulness is a like a really the what am I trying to say? The result of a good meditation practice. Hi. Being mindful is really what the goal of meditation in many ways, so that we can, have it almost brings a more of a zest to life. We don't get so bogged down. It takes the edge off for sure. Anytime that we feel like we're flowing through life, like life is easy, although nothing has really changed, we are being mindful. And meditation is a place to practice that. The key is, again, the bare attention, that it's bare of any kind of judgment, decision, or commentary. And what I'd like to do tonight is just kind of point some of those things out, maybe invite you to look at some things through the guiding this evening, and take a look at meditation from the standpoint of being mindful. And so if you're new here, the people that have been coming here for a while are very used to my style, and a lot of other facilitators' style of facilitating, and that is guiding the meditation for about 10 or 15 minutes, and then the remainder of the meditation period will be silent. And many people feel that silence is where the real learning comes from, because in that silence, the mind has a tendency to want to drift off. A lot of times when we're listening to guiding, when we're sitting here comfortably and I'm talking, it's very easy to stay with the words and stay with what is happening. But when that silence kicks in, we get an opportunity to really watch things, to see the mind, see where it wants to go. And for most of us, hopefully most of us, the opportunity to really get into the practice and understand what we are all about, and rest in that presence, where the mind isn't necessarily going to the past or future, but we can still observe it. We can still be aware of the thoughts without having the thoughts really throw us off guard, or really, throw the wrench into the practice, so to speak. I don't know how that saying came about, throw the wrench in there. It's like I think it's like somebody working on a car or something, and they drop the wrench in the motor and really goof things up, But we want to, refrain from throwing that wrench in our practice. And so tonight we'll be looking at mindfulness from that perspective. Anybody have any questions about mindfulness or how it pertains to concentration? Two different practices. I practice both of them. Sometimes I really feel drawn to concentration. Sometimes I really feel drawn to mindfulness. And as far as probably a lot of people have said this, but as far as being more beneficial for our everyday experiences, practice of mindfulness is probably where it's at. So if everybody's willing, we will make ourselves comfortable. Feel free to close the eyes. Bring your attention to some aspect of the body. Notice possibly how the body feels. And this could mean the posture of the body or the temperature of the body. So we're just kind of doing a self-directed body scan, if you will. when we focus on the body, it can become very interesting. We realize that the attention goes towards some area, and it could be the hands or the skin or the breathing. Our attention might fall on an ache or a pain or the warmth or temperature or something. All sorts of different things that it can fall on to. And so when we do that, we can notice that we're very present when that happens. When I ask you to bring your attention to the body, we're doing it in the present moment. And it seems very, very comfortable, probably. It should. And very easy to do. It doesn't take any thought. It doesn't really take any intention, except for to just observe the body. And so that's an activity that we can do in the present moment. If we have an ailment in the body, if something's bothering us, for example, we might catch ourselves thinking about the past and how that happened. An old injury, for example. And that can lead on to, I wonder why that happened. If I would have done something differently, maybe that wouldn't have occurred. Or my back is sore because I did this kind of work, or I was born with this type of defect or something. And just as easily we can take that aspect of the body and think about what we might do in the future. Something to help the body feel better in the future, to look better in the future. We might feel as if I wish the body would be cooler. I hope it cools down in this room in the near future. Or maybe we want the body temperature to be warmer, more warm in the future. And if we're very, very sensitive to this, we'll notice that bringing our attention to the body in the present moment is much, much easier, less conflict. There's no judgment, there's no decision, except when the mind goes into the past. Such as that ailment in the body, or when the mind goes into the future. How can I fix this? Something's not right, I can make it better. So this is the activity of the mind pertaining to the body. Any aspect of the body. When we bring our attention to the breath, the world's most popular meditation object, if we just feel the sensation of the breath against the nostrils, for example, we're being very present. We're noticing something that's happening in real time, in the present moment, staying with each breath. If we notice that we're having trouble breathing because of an accident that we had in the past, then we can notice that there's judgment, concern, decision, commentary happening, which makes things a little bit harder to work with. Just because there's a little bit of a stress factor happening anytime we go into the past. And same thing when we go into the future, as far as fixing. It can pertain to anything. So if we stay in the immediate reality of what is happening, we get a chance to see our true nature, who we really are. Our Buddha nature, if you will. And it's really pertaining to the activity of the mind, the thoughts that we have. When we're very present, thinking about the body in the present moment, focusing on the breath in the present moment, we're not asking for anything to be any different or any better, any worse. We're accepting everything just as it is. We might catch the mind wandering off, and we lightly tap ourselves on the shoulder and say, let's bring that back to this present moment, which means bringing it back to the breath, perhaps. And that's really the basis behind our practice. And if we were very, very strict with ourselves, we could just work on that alone, keep bringing ourselves back to the breath, to this present moment. And many of us do that. In reality, it's very difficult, and if we do that with too much intention and really look at that as the only peace of mind that we can find, just simply resting in that present moment, it's almost like a falseness that we're finding. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it, and it's a very good practice. But in the practice of mindfulness, we are not being so strict with ourselves, we could say. If a thought comes to mind, it's as if we can still be in the present moment if we are observing the thought rather than being carried away with it. In that way, we can actually observe ourselves in the present moment thinking about something that happened in the past. We can observe ourselves in the present moment thinking about fixing something without getting drawn into it. In other words, thinking about the future. There's a very subtle difference between having the thought and being aware of the thought. Being aware of the thought, we can still be present. And when we practice this in meditation, this is the proving ground, the testing ground. And then we can do this in everyday activities, everyday life. We can be in the flow regardless of what we're doing. And the flow in this case is being very present, knowing where we are, knowing what's happening in our environment, not being drawn away and carried away with activities and experiences and thoughts. So we can remain mindful of the breath and be very present. And we use that as a tool to rest in this presence. It's our foundation. It's our place to come back to. The mind wanders away and we come back to the breath. The mind goes into the past or the future and we come back to the breath when we catch it. But if we feel we can reach a point where the breath becomes very much a part of the background, just like the thoughts themselves. And we can actually be more present on allowing things to completely dissipate. Being aware that there's a thought of the past and seeing it rise and fall, or a thought of the future, seeing it rise and fall away, without anything getting sticky. Without identifying with anything as being mine, or even being an others. That's observing. So at this point we are the witness of the thoughts, actually the witness of all the activities. In this way there is no this or that. There's no good or bad. There's no this way or that way. And perhaps most of all, what this points to is that nothing in our exterior world and the worldly experiences has to change in order for us to be at peace, to have peace of mind. So this peace of mind is everyone's birthright, because we can all rest in this presence. It doesn't necessarily even take a lot of practice, but just awareness of what this presence is. And it's being aware of the thoughts rather than feeling as if we are thinking the thoughts. Knowing that there is a difference. Resting in our true nature. And so we use the body to come into this presence. We can focus on any aspect of the body. Usually the breath is the tool of choice. We notice that when we are even lightly focused on this aspect of the body, that we are very present. If a thought arises, we see it arise and fall away, just like a passing cloud, coming and going. We might recognize that it's a thought of the past or the future. Just let it float on by like a passing cloud. A common analogy is imagining that we're sitting on the edge of a river. Maybe there's a bend of a river and it's flowing kind of around us. Imagine that we're sitting there meditating and that there's bubbles and small sticks and different things floating down this river. These are a representation of our thoughts. we see these bubbles and these sticks and maybe some small debris just going down this little stream. We don't see it as good or bad. We don't have any judgments about it. We don't try to change it. We don't try to grab it and identify with it. We just let it float on by. Just let it go on its own, very own way. Watching all of this with bare attention, bare of judgment, bare of decision, and bare of any kind of commentary of things being right or wrong or good or bad. And meditation is the proving and testing ground for this. If we can practice this in meditation, then we can take it out into the world. And this is mindfulness. If your attention isn't already there, bring it back to the breath. And take a little deeper than normal inhalation of the breath and bring some energy into the body. Notice how that feels. And exhale and do this again. Bring some energy into the body through the breath. Let the lungs expand a little bit. Exhale and do this one more time. Allow yourself to come back into this room. Thank you. May each and every one of us be well, happy, and peaceful. May no harm come to us. May no difficulties come to us. And may we all meet with spiritual and worldly success. May we have the patience, the courage, and the understanding to meet and overcome any problems or any difficulties that we might face in life. Thanks again for everybody for sharing the space with everyone else. But if anybody has any questions about the practice or about what we're talking about tonight is mindfulness, and we started talking about how it pertained to concentration. And the message that I wanted to get across is that mindfulness is, the practice in meditation paves the way for our everyday consciousness, our everyday living. And it really does help our lives flow, by not allowing things to get sticky, but maybe perhaps most of all noticing when we are not present. And we don't have to be present just when we're meditating or work at it just when we're meditating, but we can work at it at all times. And if meditation, only allowed us to feel good, and it only worked while we're meditating and doing the practice, I wouldn't be an advocate of it. I wouldn't necessarily encourage people to meditate all the time if it only worked while we're meditating. The whole idea is that it helps our lives outside of the practice as well. I find meditation very enjoyable, and but I think like a lot of people that don't practice meditation, they don't see the benefit of it outside of the practice. And I think we do. That's why we're here. We sit in this presence, and we know that it's healing for us in many different ways, and it is both physical and mentally. And it makes our lives, run a little bit better, a little bit smoother, I guess you could say. And it works. I'd like to read something here. This is from actually the book that we're going to be using in the 8-week program book, Mindfulness in Plain English. This is an area that Bhante Gudarachana talks about. Bhante G, you might know him by Bhante G. He talks about the difference between thought, conscious thought, and being aware of the thought, kind of what we were talking about here. He says that there is a difference between being aware of a thought and thinking a thought. That difference is very subtle. It is primarily a matter of feeling or texture. A thought you are simply aware of with bare attention feels light in texture. There is a sense of distance between that thought and the awareness viewing it. It arises lightly like a bubble. It passes away without necessarily giving rise to the next thought in that chain. Normal conscious thought is much heavier in texture. It is ponderous, commanding, and compulsive. It sucks you in and grabs control of consciousness. or it grabs control of consciousness. By its very nature, it is oppositional, and it leads you straight to the next thought in the chain, apparently with no gap in between them. Conscious thought sets up a corresponding tension in the body, such as muscular contraction or quickening of the heartbeat, but you won't feel tension until it grows to actual pain, because normal conscious thought is also greedy. It grabs all your attention and leaves none to notice its own effect. The difference between being aware of the thought and thinking the thought is very real, but it's extremely subtle and difficult to see. And concentration is one of the tools needed to be able to see the difference. So to be, and I might add concentration or awareness is one of the tools that we need to see this difference and know this difference. And it's kind of like when we're on vacation, or hiking, that kind of thing. If you like being out in nature, how you just feel better about everything. Nothing is, that dark cloud that can follow us around isn't there. And the thoughts are much easier. We're not thinking about the office or what we got to, what we have to do and how we have to survive and all these things. We're giving ourselves, the opportunity to kind of let the mind go, but we can be aware of these things. We're not getting drawn into it. We're not getting drawn into fixing things or what happened in the past by our thoughts. We're just letting them go. And it's kind of like that, but we are more consciously, in meditation anyway, in the practice of meditation, we're more consciously trying to rest in this presence. And you might also experience it like if a person was counting the breaths, and how we can count the breath and still count the numbers, and we still notice that there's thoughts going on, just a little bit of thought happening there, but it's not this gripping thought that pulls us away from that activity of counting. And so it's very, very light. And sometimes we feel as if when we're sitting in meditation, as there's thoughts going on, but they're like back here, and they're not getting in the way of anything. That's another example. Everybody know what I'm talking about? Any questions? Any commentary? Anything? Tony?
I just wanted to share that I'm recently back meditating again after a very, very long absence. And it's wonderful to be doing that. This is the first time that I have shared it with other people again, and I just want to thank all of you for being part of that.
Yeah, great. Thank you for being here. Yeah. Yeah, we've had so many different meditation experiences in this room. It's pretty wild. We used to do 3-hour meditations in this room. I can't remember what night it was, but the first time we did it was on a Friday afternoon. I set it up. I advertised it, to the small number of people I had in the group. And about a dozen people showed up. I thought, who's going to, my original idea was that, I think it was between 1 and 3 in the afternoon, or 1 and 4 in the afternoon. And I thought, who's going to show up for this? And about 12 people showed up for a 3-hour meditation. And then I think we eventually moved that to Tuesday or night or something like that. I can't remember what the situation was, but we've had so many different experiences of different kinds of groups and different people meditating in this room that it's been kind of warmed it up a little bit. I think a lot of people feel pretty good when they walk into this building, when they walk through the door. And it's a different energy when you meditate with other people. I mean, we can sit at home for years and years and years, and almost feel like we're the only ones out there meditating. But when we sit with other people, it really does make a difference. It reminds us that we're not alone, that we're doing that.
I'll share along those lines. I've been meditating for about 3 years now, actively, what you could call a meditation practice. And this is my first time with more than me. So it's cool. I've loved it.
Is it first time with people?
First time with people.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That's a
cat. My cat joins me regularly.
Yeah. Cats are cool to meditate with, though.
Yes.
Yeah.
Always lecturing me on how I'm doing it wrong, I think.
Yeah. Cats will.
This is very enjoyable.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you like it. Yeah. I encourage people, like if somebody was new to meditation, which neither of you are, but if somebody was new to meditation, I would encourage them to come to a group like this, like once a week. I think it's just wonderful. When I first moved to the Valley, there wasn't much of this happening, but now there is quite a bit. If you look at the calendar on the Meditation Learning Center, you see that there's quite a few things going. Friday night, Wednesday night, tonight. This week was it Monday? Oh, not a Monday anymore. There was a course on Monday, but pretty much Wednesday, Thursday, Friday of this week.
What do we do on Thursdays?
Thursday is not a meditation group like this. It's a group that's filled up already, but it's a grief recovery group that it correlates with this practice, because it's my belief and a lot of other people's belief that the things that bother us, the experiences that we've had difficulties with in our life, get repressed into the mind or body. It's like the subconscious hangs on to these things and feels like it's protecting us in some way, and sometimes it's beneficial, but many times it hurts us that the things that we cannot see, the things that are repressed and that aren't coming up for us, actually can bother us in many severe ways. So in other words, if there's something that is causing a conflict with us, and we don't have a chance for it to come up and work with it, it can stay with us for the rest of our lives and cause limiting factors in our lives. And so just like in meditation or other different kinds of practices like this, anytime that we can go into the subconscious and pull these things up by the roots, and get them up, then we get to look at them. And that's what we're doing here. We talked about that quite a bit last week. So I think as far as all that was said about mindfulness, we can keep in mind that we can be practicing all the time. We don't have to be practicing just when when we have set that intended half hour or hour or whatever our practice time is. We can be practicing all the time, but I still think it's important to have that what I call the formal practice of meditation. That's this thing here, because as I said, this is like the third time I've said it, but this is like the training or the proving ground for that mindfulness practice, because we get so sensitive to it here, and you can check it out for yourselves. See if the mindfulness is this feeling that we have. It's a kind of a some people feel it more in the body, and some people feel more like a freeness or looseness in the mind. But mindfulness seems to stay with you. And I remember the first time I really experimented with it and experienced it, I would meditate in the morning before when I had a 9-to-5 job. I would meditate before I went to that job, and that mindfulness would seem to follow me all the way to the workplace. And I noticed that after I got to work, it would dissipate. It's like I allowed it to or something. Actually, I could kind of feel it as soon as I grasped for the doorknob and opened up the door to the building. It was like, okay, it's gone. And then by becoming more aware of that, I was able to kind of let it carry me through the morning. And then eventually I would, on my lunch break, I would find time to meditate in my car or sometimes go to a park and just meditate for like 10 minutes. And that would kind of increase, the ability to remain mindful, throughout into the afternoon. And then eventually I would, sometimes be teaching at night or just have a meditation practice in the evening. I noticed that mindfulness stayed with me almost through the entire day while I was working and dealing with people and all of that. And the only thing I could really call it is mindfulness. And maybe there's another word for it. Maybe it's just being more conscious or more aware. I don't know, because when we describe what mindfulness is, usually if we're going to try to use a single word, which is impossible to do, but if we're going to try to use a single word, that word awareness would slip in there. That awareness is very close to mindfulness, but mindfulness is more broad than that. A lot more things happening. And it's all about it in this book here. If you want the definition of mindfulness, you have to read this. And but that, just realizing that mindfulness can stay with the person. I remember walking across the parking lot after work, realizing that mindfulness is still with me. I can kind of feel it, within the body and the mind. So it's something to work towards, and something to try to, strive to carry with us, and ask ourselves, if it's not there, why is it not there? And some people just would call that mindfulness just spirituality, like having that spark of spirituality within them. And that's fine too. We don't really have to label it, and I'm kind of against labels anyway, but at that time, and I still do, I call it mindfulness, that spark of mindfulness just staying with us all the time. And that's being present. Being in that present moment, that stillness of the heart and the mind. It's a good place to be, And from a Buddhist perspective, if we can, at the final moments of our life in this lifetime, if we can have that spark, that presence and that mindfulness with us, we will probably have done our job, as being a human this time around. And whether we believe in whatever we believe in, as far as at the end of this lifetime, if we can carry that with us, into that moment of passing on, then we've done some very good work. Yeah.
I was going to just, listening to you talk reminds me to say out loud this thing that occurred to me last week or week before. And I had been feeling like, spiritual, right? And I've had a long history of spirituality and mindfulness, especially outdoors. It's always been very easy to get into that state outdoors.
Yeah.
Right? And so I've just been floating on this, in this kind of flow for a long time, and a situation came up that literally knocked the wind out of me. It was a very emotional event that just sucked the wind right out of me. And it was like I had an emotional hangover almost, right, the next day when it happened. It's taken me still a very long time to come back into that space. And I just wondered if you'd experienced something like that before, what that might look like as you practice mindfulness more, or meditation more.
Yeah, we can have those experiences. A lot of times, those things that take take the wind out of our sails, like you said, is it for a lot of people it's a scatteredness, like a scatteredness of mind, really a lack of concentration. And we can kind of check that by meditating. If our meditation, if we can't get into that stillness or that presence when we're meditating, then we know that there's some scatteredness and that there really isn't very much awareness happening there. And sometimes we just have to give it some time. Terry was talking about that earlier, like when there's something dramatic that happens in your life, it confuses a person. You become forgetful. You have to be careful when you're driving. All of these things because, and a lot of people don't realize it, but there's this. We are not alert. We're not alive. As we were before that. Is that kind of how the experience what you're having?
It was like it just felt like I didn't really have control of what was happening anymore. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I'm obviously going through the business of my everyday life,
Yeah.
but I could not bring myself to a space of awareness, or you know what I mean? It was like I couldn't stop the chatter, and it was just
Yeah.
hard to describe. Right?
Yeah. That's very
I
common.
just got knocked off course. Like when you drive home from work and you do, did I stop at the red light when there was a red light? You know what I mean? Can you just do in the routine? And it was like my body just went into survival mode and just shut it down. It was like just doing the routine. It's like following the matrix, right?
Yeah.
And I couldn't come out of it for a little bit.
Yeah. Do you want to speak on that?
Yeah, I've been going through all that, following a death of somebody very close, and I'm usually a pretty together, on target person, and I, in these last few months, have been doing the craziest, goofiest things and struggling with my meditation and dealing with that general confusion and feeling of being very, very overwhelmed. And I don't know if like a part of the brain or a part of the mind sort of shuts down so that you're not feeling too much at any one time. I'm not really sure. I've never had that experience in all the crazy challenges in my life. I've never had that experience until this time around. It's quite frightening, actually.
It's kind of like it's hard to read and things like that. Things that you normally do. But hopefully, it won't. It won't linger too long, and if it does, we just have to realize that we can, just have faith that to keep up our practice, the practice of mindfulness and meditation, and that's a good way to check it, to see if go into meditation, see if we can be present, and if we can't, not to lose hope, And for that, those are the times when we should be meditating the most. And sometimes we feel so scattered and so busy and trying to catch up on things, from when something goes wrong. We feel overwhelmed, but we feel like we don't have time to meditate. But actually, those are the times that we should be meditating, the most.
And then you have experience of the meditation doesn't feel like a good meditation for an extended period, and you can get very dismayed about continuing. But that's so important to keep continuing, even though they're not like my meditations. I'm maybe just starting to get back to where I'd like to be, but it's taken probably 2 months for that to happen. It's easy to get very discouraged, but definitely keep on keeping on with it. That's the most important thing.
Keep on keeping on.
Keep on keeping on.
It's a song, I think, isn't it? Yeah. So I hope that helps anyway. John.
You know what I do, we have between 850 and 900 clients who are very troubled, many of them, all drug addicts, all in recovery, and they'll some of them who are the worst off, they'll bring to my office. And I kind of have my office set up like a feng shui, calm atmosphere,
Mhm.
maybe a little music. And always the people who come in with problems, you know, I bring them into the present moment. A lot of them have never meditated. And I will have them sit in this chair and meditate for just 5, maybe 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And get them to focus on being in the moment, because at this moment, none of us really have problems that we can do much about, except be aware and stay here.
Right.
They bring in this thing, it's like a ball of yarn, and they want to figure out how to get this going. I have a child support, probation officer, you know, I want to go use drugs, and, you know, all these different things all mixed up in a ball. But if I can get them to start breathing and just stay in the moment, and I teach them, within 5 or 10 minutes, I can teach them you know, what I learned in the class,
Mm-hmm.
and it helps.
Yeah, yeah,
It helps them. And, some of them come back and, you know, and it works. Because most of the, you know, people think they have control over life and over things, and we really have control over very few things in our life.
Right.
Really think about it.
yeah,
And if we can get into the present moment, I think we realize that.
yeah,
And I like what you said about awareness, because I think they're all cousins, you know, mindfulness, awareness, presence.
they're all in the same family, yeah,
They're all the same thing.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's a lot, in many ways, it's giving up that control that we feel that we have. It's just, and even if it's for a moment, like if we consciously say to ourselves, I'm going to meditate for 20 minutes, I'm going to give up control completely. I mean, we feel like taking off the backpack full of rocks, you know.